Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Creators Forum, and I am so happy to welcome Tevi Hirschhorn. Tevi is a product and design leader located in Israel. He's worked with companies like Disney and Time Warner and Dell and Nectar Sleep, and I am honored to call him a dear friend. I've benefited from his advice for several years now, and I really, really look forward to this conversation. So welcome, Tevi.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So once again, just to remind you and everybody else that the goal of this show, podcast, whatever it may be, is really takeaways for people in the marketing and creative space. Like, I want to make sure that they have these nuggets of gold when they walk out, because oftentimes podcasts kind of can just flow and run. And I've had that in other areas in my podcasting space.
Never,
no way, except for the 3-4 hour, juggernauts. But this is not that. This is much more, much more succinct. And we're gonna launch it with the question: what are the ingredients to an amazing product?
All right. So I would say, first of all, it's less like a recipe of individual ingredients. An amazing product is more like a beautifully presented plate. So it's the total experience. It's got the structure, the looks delicious, it smells good, tastes amazing, got layers of flavor. It leaves you feeling good afterwards and thinking about the experience you just had.
Satiated.
So it's a total experience. Satiated, okay. Yes. Feeling
it
full, feeling good.
You. Okay, I like how everything went straight up food.
A good product, straight up food. I think we can make this run through the entire. This analogy could probably run through the whole.
That's life. But, life is food.
A good product. Okay. So a good product has all that. It makes you feel like it was created just for you. This is my favorite dish, and that's a very personal experience. It's an intimate feeling. So a good product has that same thing. It feels like it was made for me. It solves my need perfectly. It has the delighters. It's the total experience. It's a total package. And it solves my problem, like being hungry. So that's a good product. But an amazing product is one that takes it to the next level. It's the perfect experience. It's like the perfect dining experience at an amazing restaurant. It's got all the components on the plate. And then at the end of the day, it's still a business. So people need to pay for that product. People need to pay for that dish.
Makes sense. Is there a product, like what's your favorite product? If you can think about, in your experience, like this is the quintessential product from everything from, beginning to end, the experience of ordering it to receiving it, and opening it, or maybe it's not like a physical product. Maybe it's a SaaS product, a digital product, whatever. Like what comes to mind when I say, what's your favorite product and why?
So I actually, one of my favorite products is what I'm sitting on right now, my chair. It was very expensive, but I was in excruciating pain for like years, and I was hurting my back, and I was working from home, and I had a good desk, and I had a good computer, and I had a good space. But I never spent money on a good chair. And someone told me, like, listen, it's time to get a good chair. You'll appreciate it. It was like $1,000. And I did a lot of research to figure out the right kind of chair. And I got a steel case gesture, and it looks beautiful. It's a very nice design, and it's comfortable. And it seems to always work no matter what position I'm in. I could be sitting up straight working. I could be like leaning back. And it's just the right amount of tension, the right amount of support and comfort.
Can we take a look at this bad boy? Could you show it off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you could see, but
looks like a chair.
Yeah.
I can see. Can you pick it up, or is it too? It's like a heavy. It's a heavy.
It's pretty heavy. I don't know where we want this podcast to go, but
wherever it's going, man.
This is the chair.
All right,
that's legit. Podcast got weird.
It's almost like when Elon Musk smoked pot on Joe Rogan. It's almost there.
It's almost there. Like that.
That's where this is headed.
It's life.
Yeah.
It's life.
Nice. Yeah. I actually just got a chair, right? I was so looking forward to this. I was sitting on, lighting. Okay. That was crazy.
Is this a professional production?
It's a good question. Yes. Because things like that don't happen in amateur productions. You got to be a pro. You got to have lighting to get screwed up. If you don't even have lighting, it's not going to get screwed up. You know what I mean? So
we've seen the biggest malfunctions at the biggest Super Bowls. So.
Yes, that was an hour and a half delay or something like that. Anyway, that was like 6-8 years ago. Okay, so I've been sitting on my wife's grandmother's chair that she gave us when we came to Israel. Literally was just destroying my back. It was like one of those 1970s, like puke yellow, like one of those things, just metal, just all metal. It's very painful. So my wife, who's the best, ended up saying like, oh, she's, she's a nurse and she's a nurse practitioner, and they kind of give gifts like in the holiday season. So like you can pick a bunch of things. So she ended up choosing for me like a nice gaming chair. And I was so excited. And here it is. It's one of these guys. Oh, one of these guys, right? I mean, you can kind of check it out. Right, that's like it's a bit of a beast.
Look at that.
It is not comfortable. For some reason,
no.
just doesn't fit. It contorts, but I'm trying to be cool.
So it's got
for
the
myself.
UI, but not the UX.
Yes.
It's got the UI, not the UX.
Yes, it is a beautiful chair. It is a beautiful chair, but the experience itself is lackluster. So for you were talking about, specifically your favorite product is this chair, because ultimately it solved your massive back problem, and that's a huge problem to solve. That's
but
pretty cool.
It's not only that. It feels like it solved it like for me. Like it's like this chair was made for me. It feels so right for me, and I use it every day, so it's got this like intimate feeling.
Is there any like custom
it's my chair.
adjustments or something that you can do to it, or it's kind of like this is just how it was?
Yeah, so totally. No, there's some adjustments, and so it is kind of mine. It also sturdy, so it feels like it'll really last. So it got that reliability going for it, and it looks great too.
Very nice. Awesome. The chair. Now you were talking about the UX and UI situation and how my chair is not fulfilling that. Can you explain a little bit just about the background between UX and UI, and what's the difference and why it makes sense to have both?
Sure. So I'll go back to our food analogy. The user experience, the UX, is that total experience from when you walk into a restaurant, sitting down, the ambiance, the sound, the decor, and then when your food comes in, it's how it's presented, the smell, the appearance, the taste. That's the total experience. Whereas UI is like just how that food looks. So it's just a tiny slice of that experience. With your chair, it might look pretty, but it doesn't quite give you that full experience.
Gotcha. So what's most important?
So the UX is all about the user. You have to do user research. You have to understand who you're designing for. Otherwise, you're designing in a vacuum. You're designing like your best guess, your best idea, and then you come up with a chair like that, where they probably didn't have anyone sitting it to figure out if it's actually good. So they destroy the whole user experience because it doesn't actually work for you. So you have to understand the problem you're trying to solve. You have to understand who you're solving it for. That requires research, testing, usability testing, actually speaking to your customers, speaking to your users.
That's interesting, because a lot of people, they're a little bit afraid to discuss with their customers because, number one, they might feel like they're coming off as amateurs themselves. Like, if I want to sell you a certain product and then I'm like, would you like this? Would you like that? How does this feel? It kind of gives is like, well, shouldn't you know? You're the pro.
Exactly.
It's like imagine like a doctor, you go to a doctor's office and, the doctor said, well, maybe we should do this. Should we treat you with this or should we treat you with that? Like, what would you prefer to be treated with? It's just like, I came to you, you're the pro. So
totally. So there are research methods. You have to do it properly. You're not asking their opinion. You're going to say, if it's a chair, for example, you're not saying, do you like this chair? You're going to say, we want to include you in the design of our chair. Have a seat. Do you have lumbar support? Do you have mid-back support? Can you sit there for a long time? Is anything hurting you? And you're asking like very, very specific, clear questions that's more about research rather than just asking for their opinion.
Okay. Wow. I like that. It's a very subtle difference, but it's very, very important, because I know a lot of people who are asking like, do you like this? Do you like that? You know, maybe should I try this thing? Where you're saying, no, we want to enhance the features. You let me know what is something that is enjoyable for you, is not enjoyable for you, and that's going to help us better cater this product to you. And that kind of comes from position of like, oh wow, like they're fine tuning versus like, I don't know where I'm going with this. All right, I like that.
Exactly. And then to top that off, people don't always know what they want. So there was a famous study, I don't remember who it was, but there was an electronics manufacturer that was trying to find out what color their stereo should be. It was a boombox. This was a long time ago, back in the days when people had boomboxes. And they were asking people, do you like the black or do you like the yellow? And most people voted on yellow. It was bright. It was cool. It was fun. And I thank you for your time as participation. To thank you for your participating in this research study. Feel free to take a boombox on your way out. Almost everybody took a black one.
Wow.
So they all thought yellow looked great, but when it came to like, do I want to be seen with a bright, flashy yellow? Like maybe it's a bit too much. They all chose the black. So there maybe one or two took the yellow, but it was like overwhelmingly everyone said they wanted yellow, but then overwhelmingly took black.
Wow, that's awesome. That's better. That's really looking at the actual result as opposed to the quote unquote desired, you know, the claim that's what they want. I mean, I've had that a lot, especially in, you know, this is the creators forum and we're creative people. And in that space, it is so difficult. I mean, I've worked on edits where they said, I asked like, can you give me directions? For example, I was working on ads, on Facebook ads, and they kept on telling me to like, can you change this? Can you move that? Can you do this? And I was like, well, wait a second. Like I can do all that stuff, but what's your formula? Like, what are you actually looking for? And they said, we don't know. We'll only know when we see it. And that makes it a much more difficult experience.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And that makes it a significantly more difficult experience than when somebody actually does understand, you know, this is what I want. And I like how you basically are saying it's not about what people say, it's about what they do. It's their actions. And so, you know, in the last podcast, I was speaking with Jonathan Kahn, and he said one of his research methods is he kind of pays attention to what people are reacting to online and his digital, you know, advertising or whatever, like what ads are actually getting the clicks, and not what people are saying, but what's driving the results. You know, once again, to stay with the advertisements and ad companies, is that, you know, they're like, creative's great and all that stuff, but if it's one word, like they were talking about, like they showed a banana or an apple, you know, and it didn't matter whatever the product was, is that the thing that had the apple in it, that got the most clicks. So they're like, we got to go by click. So, you know, ultimately actions drive results. So I guess that's what it works with UX and UI as well.
Than words.
Seriously, and truer than words. So you moved from kind of the UX UI design world into more of like the product world. So can you explain for us people who, you know, aren't 100% familiar with what it means? Like when somebody says, I'm a head of product, I don't know, like UX UI, okay, user experience, user interface, like I can kind of understand what's going on, but product is such a large, that's just a general word, you know, like what does it mean specifically? So, you know, to loop back around, like you moved from UX UI to product, and, you know, one, what is it? And two, why?
So for me, moving from design to product was kind of subtle. I almost didn't even realize it was happening. I was always more of a of a design thinker, design strategist more than like a craftsman. So as I shifted from like strategy, like from craft to strategy, I ended up like being in product. And like that means I would more direct the team. I would get good illustrators or good designers, good UI designers, researchers, whoever it was I'm working with. But I was more orchestrating the overall product, and I'd interface with development. I'd make sure I understood the business side of things, and it just ended up being product. And part of that is that I've always been kind of business focused in general, like outcome focused. So I never like to do just a purely like the ultimate user experience, because it's got to solve that business need. And I was always good to work with from the business side because I understood that product goal. And that's just kind of how it just happened. And I realized that's what I was doing. But
So
I don't know if that answers.
well, yeah, I mean, it basically you saw a need and you saw what you're naturally were gravitating towards. I mean, this is something that I personally am kind of experiencing right now. Is I have a friend of mine who's been saying, like, because I am in the creative space, and my whole life I've been in the creative space. I was an actor in high school and a musician and an audio engineer,
Wow.
and now it's moved to video production and all that stuff. And there's a massive part of me that likes the creative atmosphere, but then there's another huge part of me that kind of likes the maestro of the orchestra, is that not necessarily to be the one playing the instrument, but to kind of putting all the pieces together. And so like for me,
Right.
as you're explaining it, it's kind of like the UX UI is like the people on the ground, and like they're the ones who are really doing the creative aspects of it, whereas the product is kind of overseeing the full field. It's like the bird's eye view of like what needs to actually happen to make sure that this whole thing is a success. So I mean, do you end up
Well,
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of overlap. There's design thinking, there's design strategy. It's I just always gravitated towards that area of design, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of just became product. So I've been doing that for like I guess 8 years now. I always still do the actual design, but to me that's like something that I like to do it, but it's not the part that gets me excited. I love like solving a real problem, or the really cool outcome, a KPI jumping, or
Mm-hmm.
things like that is what excites me. So it just happened to be I kind of shifted to product, where some designers kind of go deep onto, they just stay on design and they go deep, deep, deep on that UI crafting. But that wasn't really me. I just kind of moved more and more like broadly and strategically.
Very nice. Very nice. It's also, it's important to understand when a certain phase of life seems to be, coming a chapter coming to an end, and it's like ready to move to the next level. I mean, life brings us pretty wild opportunities. For me, in my background, I was involved in education and outreach. Um, and then kind of when just life happened and I needed to bring in more money, ultimately that was the main driving force. I moved more into the business world, which is something that I never thought I would be involved with. And I just took a job in marketing because I'm like, all right, well, I had to convince people to enjoy the knowledge and enjoy, for here was Judaism and how do you understand Judaism? And I was like, okay, I had to take something and creatively package it and show it to them in an enjoyable way. So I was like, okay, I can do that for marketing. But then I completely fell in love with it. So sometimes you don't even know you have any interest in an area until you start doing it and you realize that that's really something amazing. And it just so happened that, I still have a heart and soul in teaching and outreach, but professionally I've kind of expanded. So I definitely can relate to that idea of expanding and gravitating towards something that, is kind of like a really, really gets you going. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So in that vein, where do you find creative ideas or creative inspiration, and how do you keep track of it?
So that's a good one. So I still do the creativity stuff, the visual design. I love that. I also have a lot of other side projects I do. I write and illustrate children's books.
Oh, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get
So
there.
I'm oh, I bet. So I like to keep track of everything, but I also have ideas that might be better for one thing that I'm working on, or another. Um, if I'm feeling like stuck, I have like a stack of old magazines for like with communication arts and veranda. I've got books in all sorts of creative areas like typography, landscape architecture, photography, like everything, the full gamut of anything creative. And if I'm feeling stuck, I'll just flip through flip through a book or a magazine. If I'm really stuck on a problem, I'll write down what it is I'm stuck on, and then I'll take a walk, I'll take a shower, I'll cook myself a nice lunch. And usually something like that will get my brain thinking about it in the background. I find writing it down, getting it out of my head, like helps me crystallize the problem, and then stepping away and doing something that lets my brain just turn off will actually kind of clear things out.
Huh.
Um,
That's
and then to organize, I have two notebooks. I have a dot notebook and a blank notebook. The dot notebook is for like written notes
what's a
and like
dot
UI.
notebook?
It's like a dot grid. It's got like
Okay. Oh, like literally, I thought it was like
yes.
a, I don't know, a brand or a, like made of mink
No, no.
fur, mink, monk.
a
It's
mink
made
a
of
mink fur
monks.
notebook.
It could be
Monks. Oh, it's just a dot grid. Here we go.
mongoose.
Dot.
Uh,
I don't know if you can see that, but it's like a
okay, there we
grid,
go.
but
Yeah,
it's very light. It's very light grid, and the dots just help you like you can make your line. It's not like an actual grid
it's
of
more for
lines.
drawing,
So yeah, it's like for drawing like
sketching.
wireframes, UI sketches. Yeah,
Okay,
and then I have a blank one that's more like for illustration and drawing.
huh? Okay, so
And then I also put everything into Notion. So all new ideas they get categorized in the right notebook. They get tagged, and I try to review them when I'm like working on my books. I'll go look at my recent book ideas and notes on that. And if I'm working on a project, I'll go look at the recent project ideas.
very cool, very cool. Okay, speaking with the organization, organization, not like company, as in being actually organized. You seem to be one of the most structured and organized thinkers that I know. And, we'll talk about, goals and stuff, in our group, and like, you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this. Everything is like, so, you know, structured. And I'm like, I'm hoping to accomplish these things. Blap, So is that a part of like your nature? Did you learn it? Did you learn how to be structured? And what's kind of like you mentioned Notion, but maybe we can dig in more into that. Like how do you keep track of everything, and how do you keep it so orderly, and what are your like go-to tools? I'd love to figure out that a little bit more.
Sure. So I'm always like continuously improving my methods and process. I'm a dad of 5 kids, and now everyone's home, and I'm homeschooling. My wife's a nurse, so she's out of the house. You could relate to that. Um, so it's important. I have to be structured, or I can't do anything. It's impossible. Also, with all the side projects and work and looking for new work, there's a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I try to stay organized. One of the biggest things I do is time blocking. So I'll for example, say these 2 hours are devoted to side projects. These 4 or 6 hours are devoted to school. I have 45-minute break while all kids are on Zoom. I could do something. So I'll try to like structure time blocks, and then I can schedule what I'm going to work on in those times. And I also actually have multiple calendars on Gmail on Google Calendar. So if I'm working on side projects, I'll hide a calendar that's not relevant. So it kind of clears things up, and I could focus on it. And I also use Todoist for personal task management.
Huh. And do you wake up in the morning, or at like, is there any type of, I don't know, my morning, I go through my list, or like on Saturdays, or well, Motzi Shabbat or whatever it is, or Sundays, do you kind of like structure your week or your month, or is there anything in that world?
Yeah, for sure. I every morning I spend like 5 minutes just looking over my list of what's happening that day, meetings, seeing if there's anything in the email that I didn't see the day before and has to be scheduled or planned. And then Sunday, I try to plan the whole week overall. Like I'll have the school schedules, kids schedules, my wife's work schedule, and I'll be able to like plan my week on Sunday. And my big thinking day is Sunday because I usually work with US people or European people. So Sunday, they're all off. And that's like when I could just like stop and think and plan and do that deep work.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always had kind of like an issue with is kind of like doing, getting my schedule organized. Like, cause the more you progress in life and the more you take on and the more responsibilities you have, the more you're like juggling all these things. And you're like, where am I going to fit this stuff in? And I guess, and one of the things
Right.
I have been thinking about is like blocking out time of like, I have to do this during this time. And, from, 7 to 9, it's this. And from 9 to 11, it's that. And, yeah. All right. That's super important. Super important.
I found also there's like I read Scott Adams has a book. I forget the title. It's like how to fail at almost everything and still win or something like that.
Okay.
He talks about structuring your day around your energy. So like for example, I used to try to read at night before bed. I figured, hey, everyone reads before bed, right? But I'd always be too tired. I'd fall asleep. I'd read half a page. Or I try to do my book projects, which is very creative, after I was done with my other work. But I was burned out and I couldn't get my creative juices flowing. So I found if I read in the morning with my coffee, I feel a lot more free. And anyone who I work with is not up yet anyway, because I'm way ahead of them in Israel in my times.
We do live
So
in
I
the
was able to
future.
like read like we pretty much do. I'll tell you, like I could tell people in California what's going to happen 10 hours from now. Like
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And then after I've read and I've got my coffee, then I'm feeling inspired and I can work on my books in a much more creative energy than I would have if I waited to the end of the day. And then somehow my work, the other stuff still gets done and it gets done well. And I had enough energy to get that. So just shifting around when I did things gave me more energy and more inspiration to be more productive around those areas.
Man, that's something that you just nailed it. It's something I've been having difficulty with over the past couple of months, because of the whole lockdown situation and my wife working as a nurse practitioner, and she has her time she's got to go in, and I'm with the kids, and so typically my days now have been starting around like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I notice myself I'm not in peak zone, and it's really hard to kind of just get going, and especially in a creative field. And when you're an entrepreneur, or not even an entrepreneur, whatever, a small business owner, and you're doing your own thing, it's so hard to kind of get going because everything really relies on a flow. At least in my world, in the creative space, you need to be flowing. And if you're not flowing, it's going to be very difficult to have a creative project, because one thing builds on top of the next. And if you kind of like just stop that mojo, it's just like, oh, where am I going from here? So I've noticed that myself, is that by starting at 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm not so great. If I know for myself, when I do start off, with praying in the morning, and then I do a little bit of learning, and like I have that. And even I was working out in the late morning, early afternoon, that got me going. So already, if I'm starting my work day around 12 or 1 o'clock, that kind of gave me a great running start to really start, moving forward. That way by 4 or 5 o'clock, that's when I was like in my prime, because all my wheels were kind of, oiled and humming. And like 4, 5, 6 o'clock, I was like, all right, I can go for another 10 hours. But starting at 4 or 5 o'clock has been very, very difficult, because by the time 8 or 9 o'clock rolls around, I'm already kind of, blowing fumes, unless it's like a crazy deadline, which somehow that extra energy, kind of gets there, and you're working until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Something like that. But it's kind of like, I got to get this done. And I guess because you kind of keep seeing each stage completed, like next, it like gives you another, more energy to be like, all right, I got this done. Like, I can't wait to work on the next thing, but I like that. I like that idea about the kind of structuring your day around your energy, if it's possible. And please God, it'll be possible once again soon. Do you have,
Amen.
Seriously. Do you have a creative process? I mean, you were touching on it before about how if you have or like a writer's block or something, you'll step away from it, you write it down. But is there, let's move into the book world. Once again, Tevi is a children's author, a multiple children's author, an Amazon best-selling children's author, and
An illustrator.
an illustrator, Um, how do you go about getting inspired to write that? Like, what's your creative process? Is it, I'm going to set time aside to, and we spoke a little bit about that. Am I going to set time aside, or it's like the motivation and inspiration hits you and, you got to write it down? Like, is there a process? Is there a template? Is there a form? Is there a method? Or nope?
So no, there are processes for each component of it. The overall creative process is the same for children's books as it is for even UI design. It always comes down to like what is this about? What's the problem that we're solving? So like for a book, it's who wants to read this? What is the core of the story? What's the nugget that we're talking about? Who wants to read it? Why do they want to read it? And then the story is built around that. So getting to that first principles about the heart of this problem that we're solving, and then you could like ideate on that. For books, is a more specific method, of course, to like creating the story and illustrating it, laying it out, and each stage has its own method, of course.
Yeah. Do you write it first and then, and then do the illustration? Because I look at it as a songwriter. I haven't done it in a while, but I used to do that quite often. People would say like, when do you write the lyrics? When do you write the music? Do you write the chorus first, or do you write the verses or whatever? And, typically for me, it depended. It wasn't always one thing, but what always was is I would always write the riffs first. I would write the music first, and then I would put lyrics on top of that. I knew the lyrics would come later, but, what is it in your situation? Do you have illustrations first? Do you have the story first?
So far, it's both. For Samson, my first book, I started with a sketch of this character, and I'm like, "All right, who is this kid? What's his problem? What's the story here?" And I like created the story around that sketch. And then for Miranda's Big Idea, I had a story I wanted to tell, and I structured and I wrote it down, and then actually changed the character like midway through. But once I had the full story, then I started sketching and illustrating. But it was the exact opposite. So you never know.
Interesting. So however it kind of hits you. Yeah. Very cool. Is there anything that you've seen that has I guess gotten you into like an inspired state? Is there anything that you've done, or it kind of just like falls from the sky?
So it is hard to like create inspiration. To me, energy, like I mentioned before, was the biggest factor. So getting myself in that right state to be able to work was key. Like if you got kids running around the house and it's 4:30 p.m. and you have a deadline you haven't started working on, it's not the best time to start coming up with a creative side project. Like you're too stressed. You don't have the right headspace for that. So creating the right environment, getting yourself in the right headspace, having the right energy, to me is most important, and that inspiration can come from that. I've also actually done things to like set certain goals for myself. I created a password for a while that was basically a message to myself to continuously work on my books. I don't want to say it too specifically, of course, but like structuring
Miranda,
a password
1, 2,
so every
3.
day.
Capital M.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Uh-oh.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
No, but it was like a message to myself. So every time I logged into my computer, I'm like, all right, I got to work on my books today. And just nagging myself until I came up with the right plan structured around my energy and headspace, and then it came from there.
That's interesting. I've never heard you speak about energy. You are the least like energy type person. Like I'm thinking, people like in Bali, like with crystals, they're like, you just got to tap into your energy just to be, get that creative vibe. But this is great.
I don't mean it in that way. I mean like literal, like if you've got a gas tank and it's all filled up, you've got
Yeah.
the energy. So when I got my fresh coffee at the beginning of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and I know nobody's going to email me or call me for a few hours, like
You're
then I'm ready
physically,
for it. I can
you're
be creative.
talking literally about energy. Like, no, I'm just so tired. I just need energy,
I'm
like
literally,
physical energy.
yeah,
I'm not talking about
yeah.
anything
But also like the
esoteric.
stress, the mental, yeah. No crystals, no crystals.
No crystals, unless it's meth.
But if that works for you, man, if that works for
If that
you,
brings the energy,
whatever works
bring
for you.
bring the energy, bring the heat.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're getting into the fun part.
Okay.
Who's your greatest influence and why?
So that's easy, but also hard. So my wife is my greatest influence. She pushes me. She questions me.
Really?
Oh, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. Yes. So
Isn't that
she
a
knows
romance
when I'm full
podcast?
baloney. So I'm
Okay,
just saying she
that's
as
pretty
far as the
amazing.
question you said influence, that's the
Yeah,
answer. That's the answer.
I
She
can
listens to all
I
my
can relate.
crazy harebrained ideas. But next, I would say, well, also books. So books are my biggest
Well,
influences.
wait
Like I've got,
one second. I want to take a quick step back to that wife thing. You said she's your
okay,
inspiration because she listens to you, but an inspiration isn't just because they listen to you.
no,
It's also because they
influence. I said
demonstrate.
influence,
Yeah. Yeah, like
influence. Yeah.
how does she influence you?
So she'll question, an idea. She'll question the direction. She'll encourage if it's a good idea. Like she's a good soundboard. She'll tell me if I'm on the right track or not. She'll shoot something down like no problem. Like that's a stupid idea, Tevi. Don't do that. Let's not waste time on that. We have so many other things to do.
Seriously.
So she influences my direction and my productivity for sure. Um, yeah,
I like it. And
I trust her judgment on that stuff.
you said books? Like
Yeah,
what type
so
of
that's
books
not a
kind of influence
person.
your thinking? You don't have a
So
person? You don't
leadership
have
management.
you can't think
Okay,
of
fine. A creative influence of mine that I would say holds true to many facets of my life is Al Hirschfeld. I don't know. Are you familiar with Al Hirschfeld? Amazing cartoonist. He worked well into his 90s. He passed away, I guess, like 10 years ago or maybe more. I'm not sure. But he was a famous cartoonist, and he had very clean line drawings that looked so effortless and simplistic. And he would do caricatures of people. Like for sure, you've seen it. He was able to capture anybody's essence with just a couple black strokes, like ink.
hmm,
And he was a master at like line thickness, line weight, and just capturing people's essence with what looked like just barely any effort at all. And that I think influenced me a lot in terms of like simple design. Like don't add more than you need. Get to the essence of that problem. Get to the essence of the character, of the drawing, of the purpose, whatever it is you're doing, and do that. Don't do any more than that. And that like influences my design, my product thinking to this day.
that's that's interesting because in the once again the music world, they said the beauty of music is where music is not played. It's in the rests. It's when you're not playing the music. It's the subtraction. And I know this is that trying to create something powerful but simple is the most difficult thing ever. It's so easy to, it's like the makeup. It's like just putting on makeup and dolling yourself up and keep on, covering yourself with whatever it is. You're trying to basically make yourself to be something that you're not. Whereas when you're stripped down, at least the product or whatever it is, to make it the most simple and basic thing, and that's really powerful, like that is incredibly difficult. And when you are
Yeah.
able to strive power within simplicity, I think that is a very, very powerful thing. And I'll tell you about your books. It's something I've noticed is that is something that you do. Your illustrations and your concepts are very simple is not the word. Clean, and they're not overblown. They're not over the top. It's just like it feels like it's exactly what it needs and no more. You know?
I spend a lot of time like even just editing words. Like if I could remove a single word it's a kid's book. So there's like maybe 200 words in the entire book.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me crazy when I read a kid's book and it's like they overly describe stuff. I'm like, I'm looking at the picture. I don't need you to describe it to me. The kid doesn't need you to describe it either. Like, we're looking at this picture. So just to be very economical in your words, in your lines, in your product and your features, and whatever it is you're doing in life, to focus on what matters. That's Al Hirschfeld.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. What drives you? What pushes
Mostly
you?
self-doubt.
Okay. What do you mean?
The more I learn,
that begs the
so,
question.
okay.
What do you? That typically is the anti drive. That's putting it in reverse. Self doubt is like,
No,
yo,
it's
I'm
like
out.
Forget it. No, it's more like the more I learn, the more I read, the more I know what I don't know. And I'm like, oh my God, there's even more I don't know yet. And I have to go learn it. I have to go master it. I have to go get better at it. And like that constant like push to do better and to learn more. It's like, I don't know. I've always been like
But
that.
is it in comparison to others, or is it in comparison to yourself? This just moved into therapy mode. Just letting you.
I don't know. Wow. Comparison to others. Am I driving myself to be better than I was?
Yeah, like do you,
Yes.
like the image in your head of yourself, is that what's pushing you? Is it like I now have seen a new me, or a new potential me, because new information or new experiences have come my way, and therefore like I can do so much more. Russell Brunson, hashtag ClickFunnels, once said,
Am I gonna get ads now?
yeah. Yes, anybody who clicks on this podcast is now going to be bombarded with ridiculous ClickFunnels ads. Oh my God, Zoom is going to get the ads now.
Oh man.
But he said something very interesting, and he goes, he just started with online market or online sales, really digital sales, and he was making like $1,000 a month, and he was like blown away. He was in college. He's like, I'm making $1,000 or $2,000 a month. This is incredible. And then he saw an article from a guy that said, I just made my first $1 million day online. $1 million day. And he's like, wait a second. I thought I was hitting the lottery by selling, potato guns online, making $1,000 a month. And this guy did it in a day. So he said, listen, I don't know if I can do $1,000 in a day, which he said now, at the point of the time he was speaking, like he already did $1 million days, but he's like, maybe I can do it in a year. If he can do it in a day, I can do it in a year. But that was kind of like him pushing himself. I don't think he viewed the guy as like, I got to be better than you. I think he saw like Russell Brunson, he can now be $1 million a year guy. So that's my kind of question to you, is that, are you looking at Tevi Hirschhorn when you say like self-doubt kind of drives you? Is that because there's a new Tevi Hirschhorn that I can be and I got to become? Or is it like, oh, I saw this guy in a blog post and I could totally do that too?
So I think they're similar. Like what you're saying, like Russell Brunson saw this other guy who was making $1 million a day. Like he took inspiration from someone else. He saw what was possible from someone else. Then he went to work on himself. So I do that a lot. I see what other people have accomplished. And I'm like, gosh, I need to work harder or do better. Like if this person can do that, why can't I also do that? Interestingly though, as I found, the more product leaders and CEOs and amazing accomplished entrepreneurs I've spoken to, a lot of them aren't necessarily as accomplished. They just went for it, or they got lucky with the right thing at the right time with the right people or whatever. And that's comforting, because then you don't have to feel bad about your own lack of accomplishment because I didn't get that lucky break yet or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Steve
Steve
Jobs.
But it's
also comforting to know that it's possible.
Yeah, totally. Steve Jobs has this quote where he's like, look at all the most successful people. They were nowhere near as like significantly smarter than you at all. Like they're just not. And I think about that often. I literally had that thought today of not just they're not smarter than you, whatever, but it was like, as carpentry media has ventured into kind of scaling content Like that's the newest offer, which is actually the first offer ever, which is repurposing content. And then because I couldn't scale myself, I ended up kind of going more into video production and, you know, corporate testimonials and promos and whatever. But now bringing it back because I'm able to kind of expand my team and move forward. But I was like, why did I not do this? A friend of mine said, well, you know, isn't this something that you want to do for years? I was like, yeah, but I guess I was just afraid to take the leap, or afraid to even try to do the research to figure out how to take the leap. But you know, what you're saying is that when you look around at very successful people, oftentimes it's really just people who had the guts to go for it.
Or the ignorance to go for it.
That's a
Like
good
they didn't know
question.
what they were getting into. I mean, sometimes that's honestly the way it happens. They just go for it. They didn't do the research. Then they get up to their neck and they're like, oh my God, what do they do? But they're in it. So they
Yeah,
got to
look,
solve it. They got
if
to
you have
fix it.
people like Mark Zuckerberg or like those like .com gazillionaires, like he was just a kid in college who's just like, hey, let's just create a social website and, you know, hopefully that's good. And he didn't know he was going to be, you know, creating, 3D glasses and, and, you know, changing elections. Like who knew that was going to be the thing? But there are other people who I think that's what kind of holds them back, is that they know. You know, just right now, everybody's going through this whole Corona thing. Hopefully we're, please God, getting closer to the back end of it than the front end. I hope it's not still the front end. That'd be wild, which it's 2020. So it might be, you never know. But I look at people and they basically are all in. I was on Gary Vaynerchuk's, because I always have to mention him in a podcast at least once. I was on his show a couple years back, whatever it was. And at the time I wanted to scale, but I was afraid of scaling, which I ended up pulling back from scaling anyway. But he's like, you have to take a knife to the throat of perfection. You need to not worry about everything. Like you'll figure it out. You're a good person. You pay him back if it didn't work out. Like, but you got to just go. You got to scale. You got to grow. And it's speed. It's speed. It's agility. That's how you build a business. You can't be afraid, because if you're going to move slowly, potentially the market can pass you by. However, with this whole Corona thing, I look at the companies that took that mentality and was like, let me grow, and they had to lay off all their people. And then all of a sudden their business is like done, you know? So it's kind of like, there needs to be a balance between the two, of moving things forward, you know, quickly and scaling, but also, having the intelligence to understand that, you know, when is the right time and how to do it. And that is a very, very difficult balance to have.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just go with like two more questions. The first one is, what's the greatest professional experience you ever had? Now, that could be anything from like, I don't know, a product you worked on, or a design, or an event that you attended and you just felt like you were like nailing it. Like, if you think about your greatest professional experience up to this point, what would it be?
So I don't know if I can pick the greatest, but something that stands out now in my mind is the first time I spoke at a conference. I've got like major stage fright, performance anxiety, and like I was afraid to do it, but I said yes when the guy asked me, the conference organizer asked me if I would speak. And it was a design conference, and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and I ended up being like the sleeper hit at the conference. The headliner asked me, "Oh my God, I never heard of you before. Where else do you speak?" I'm like, "This is the first time. I've never done this before." Everybody came over to me. They loved it. They said it was funny. It was educational. They had a great time, and it was amazing. I felt like I had conquered my fear, and not only
Mm-hmm.
conquered my own personal fear, but like delivered a good experience. People enjoyed it. They enjoyed what I had to say, and that to me was like one of those feelings where like you can do anything. You can work at something. You can conquer your own fears, your own demons, your own difficulties, and create excellence.
I can relate. You know, being my first ever real desire, professionally, was to be a rock star. Like that was it. Like huge, massive rock star. That's what I was aiming for. And I ended up having a taste of that experience.
You had the hair for it, I remember.
I did
You
have the
showed a
hair
picture
for
that you
it
had the
and the
hair.
attitude and a lot of unfortunate experiences to go along with it. But there's something about being on stage and performing your heart and soul, and just like you put in so much work and you really tried to do your best and you're just presenting yourself, you practiced, but yeah, you feel nervous because you're like, I don't want to screw it up, because basically I'm trying to put my best foot forward, and what's going to be if it just falls flat, and what are people going to think of me? And like the greatest thing is when you get out there and you nailed it. Like you came off stage and you're like, all right, that felt good. And then the whole crowd starts coming up to you and they're just like, we're not worthy, like I had that experience. The thing that comes out was I was in a band in high school and all that stuff. And we played around and, different clubs and here and there. And it was fun, but like nothing, we had friends who liked us, but we never really did anything, it didn't really kind of get out of the garage. And then I came back from Israel for the year, and I was back in Yeshiva University, and they had a battle of the bands. And I actually called up my old high school buddies who I was in a band with. And I said, listen, we hadn't played in years. I was like, I just wanted to play acoustically, just myself, but they apparently say you need a full band. Can you guys play with me? They're like, all right, sure. We'll help you out. 2 songs. Okay. So for like a week and a half, we practiced 2-3 times. I got these 2 songs down and we played it. And it was like we were Led Zeppelin. I don't know. We just did so well. And it was just so over the top compared to like all the other bands in college. It looked like we were touring for like decades. Like we had like a big, like digital screen behind us that was putting like psychedelic like pictures and we were playing with these massive like amplifiers and just like my guitar was like shaped like a lightning bolt. It was epic. And we came off stage and literally everybody started running to us. They're like, do you guys have an album? Are you on tour? Like, what are you doing? And we're like, this is the first time we ever played here, with this music. And we don't even know. But that feeling of like accomplishing, like I beat my own battle, like I overcome, and that's like one win. And then all of a sudden when everybody else appreciates it, it's just, it amplifies the whole entire experience. So, I'm really happy that you had that, and I hope you speak more often because I think it's
Jerry
important to get
Seinfeld
those.
has, for sure. Jerry Seinfeld says that like the reward for a comedian is not the money, it's the laughs. And it's like, that's the payment. Like when you hear people are laughing, it's working, you're actually doing good at what you're doing. And like you're making people happy. Like that's awesome. So when you get that immediate feedback from a crowd, like for me, it was a lot. It was like 650 people or something. Like to me, that was like a huge audience.
Yeah.
And just that immediate like feedback that I could see everyone was happy. I could see that they appreciated it. Made me feel good. And I conquered my inner demons and also made a whole lot of people happy.
Yeah, that's huge. I've had that. I used to speak, and when I was a teacher, I'd, once in a while be asked to speak in front of a group or whatever. And it was always amazing. Not when you're speaking and like you can see people listening or not listening or whatever. It's when you finish and people start coming up to you afterwards and they start asking you on what you said. It's just like that hits you. Like this actually affected you and it hopefully changed you a little bit. So, that is also a massive thing just from a human perspective to be able to influence others. I mean, I think maybe that's why this influencer culture, that's like the new thing. Like everybody wants to be an influencer because there's this desire of like, I have so much to give as a human. And most of the time we're not able to really give beyond, our small circles. Is that, and even that, the small circles kind of, they love you, they care for you, but it's kind of like a little bit taken for granted because it's like it's here and it's every day. Whereas like if you influence somebody that you don't necessarily see on an everyday basis, it has a much greater impact. And for you, you're like, wow, like I'm going way outside, and it feels pretty amazing. And
actually to bring it back to product, that's one of the cool things about product is that when you make a change or you roll out a new feature or you do something and you affect a KPI and you see, immediately like 1,200 users, go up or whatever the KPI is, or whatever the metric, you're affecting people like instantly, and you can see that effect on a dashboard somewhere. That's really exhilarating to see that impact.
Seriously, yeah. Well, especially when you can hopefully see a monetary aspect of that, following in the wake. Well, okay.
Yeah.
And okay, I said 2 more questions, but I really want this one, and then we'll get the last question, which isn't even really a question. The last question. What was your favorite book as a child?
Okay.
And why? I
For
always got to
some
ask
reason,
why.
the book, so it's a book I actually looked for, and it looks like it's out of print, but Slappy Hooper, World's Greatest Sign Painter, was like my favorite book as a kid.
Is that what it was
And
called?
have you ever heard? Yeah.
Slappy Hooper,
You never heard of this?
the world's greatest sign painter?
World's, yeah. And it was about this guy that would paint signs that were like so real that, birds would try to eat the donut on the bakery sign, or, all these things would happen because these signs were so real. And it was like such an imaginative story. And I loved the art in the book. But I think it's out of print. I tried to look for it a while ago.
So it was the fact that it was like so real and so over the top and so creative.
Yeah, it was just like an inspiring story for me.
It's interesting to think about, like what inspires an individual as a child. Did it stay with you? Do you think it stayed with you?
Yeah,
And
I always think about this book all the time. I wanted to get it for my kids, and I don't remember all of the story. I just remember the like little bits in my mind of like the things that happened because he painted such a real sign, and then he painted something in space or whatever. I don't remember. It was some crazy thing.
Very cool. Okay. Tevi, I have to thank you so much. Thank you for your expertise and thank you for your time. It was really, really enjoyable. And how can people contact you if they want to follow up a little bit?
So I'm on Twitter at TeviH, TEVIH, and on my website, and you can include the link in the show notes, tevster.com. My email's there as well, TEVSTER.com.
All right. Tevster.com.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Once again, thank you so much, Tevi. You are seriously the best.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Have a good
Peace.
day.